All right, what up, good people? It is Kashya, your host with Naked and Unashamed, and today I want to talk about surviving through tough times with toxic positivity. Surviving through tough times with toxic positivity. So I don't know if any of you have heard of that statement before, but some people use it in reference to people who just are always over the top positive, right? Where a building could have fell on their toe and they're upset because the person whose toe had to endure the brunt of the building falling is like, oh well, at least it was just a toe, and they're not like crying or whatever the case may be, right? So people call that toxic positivity. However, how I think when you have to endure something for an extensive period of time, or something that is just completely out of your control and there's nothing you can do about it but make up your mind that you won't complain or that you're going to be positive about it. Now, let me give a disclaimer, okay? I am not talking to anyone who may be enduring certain things, right? Some things you definitely need to see, that's going to be touchy. Ugh. Disclaimer. First of all, welcome to any new subscriber, returning subscriber. Lord, my speech today. Welcome any new subscriber, any returning subscriber, okay? And anyone who's just watching just to watch. Hopefully you decide to actually, hit that button. Go ahead and help me get to 50 so I can go live and don't have to struggle with these videos, right? I can just be naked and unashamed on a live video. So if y'all can help me get to 50 followers, I would greatly appreciate it. I just need 40 more of y'all to hit that button, okay? Help me at least be able to go live, okay? That'll make it easier for me to be able to just spit these videos out, okay? I don't have to worry about finding someone to charge tablet, all these other things, right? Help me help you, okay? So I can just jump on here and talk and we can boom, bam, and be on our merry way, okay? So, dealing with toxic positivity, especially depending on what you're going through, is going to be this is going to be an interesting conversation, right? Because you have to assess your own situation and determine whether or not this can actually apply to what you're going through, right? There are some things where you definitely need to do what's best for you when it comes to your emotions and feelings, right? First of all, I would also like to state that when I am discussing toxic positivity, I am not discussing it in a sense of where I don't feel my emotions, right? I am just talking about it in a manner where I don't allow the emotions that I feel to override me being able to get through whatever it is I'm going through. Does that make sense? So I feel my emotions, right? So even when enduring something for an extended period of time and you have to get through it and you're using toxic positivity, you're still feeling your emotions. You're just not allowing the emotions you feel to override your mind and being able to get through what you're going through, right? So I'm going to use myself because we're talking about me and I'm being naked and unashamed and sharing with you hopefully things you can use and apply to your life and help you get through different things, right? Um, we know that right now our country, especially if you're in the United States, and a lot of other countries are just going through a lot of different things at the moment, right? And so tensions are all over the place and people are dealing with different things, especially financially, economically. They're doing all of these different things with the banks and all of these things with jobs, with work, et cetera, right? A lot of stuff is going on. However, for me in my life, I think I had to endure one of the most interesting things ever in my life, right? I know there's people who are planning and plotting and doing all of their shenanigans and, hope and excitement for whatever future thing they want me to endure, right? Blah, blah, blah to them. Rah, rah, hoorah. Throw them a party. They're going to throw a party. But anyway. Toxic positivity. Let's talk about it. So, when you're having to endure something for a long time, and oddly enough, you can actually probably look at some people that you might admire, and they could probably also share their stories on toxic positivity as well, right? If they're willing to be vulnerable and naked with you like that, right? We already know that some of them are actually willing to just be naked and show you their bodies, right? But I'm saying, like, their hearts, right? Their experiences, and be naked with you in that manner, right? Not just physically. We know some of them have no problem showing themselves, okay? So, I have been dealing with just no privacy for the last few years, okay? And when you realize that that is what you're dealing with, it does take a toll on you, as far as just having to deal with the shock of how deeply invested some people can be about someone else's life, right? You have to deal with the shock and the different emotions that flood you once you, like, really realize that you have not been tripping. You have been seeing what you've been seeing, and you've been knowing what you've been knowing, and the pieces came together, and you're like, oh my gosh, I was right. Yeah, you have to deal with that, and it's interesting, right? It kind of changes you, yes. But with toxic positivity, you're able to endure. Okay, so toxic positivity and faith. Let me not forget faith. Okay, but if you're just trying to do this straight from a mental standpoint, you're gonna have to psych yourself out and be uh embrace toxic positivity. Even when you look at faith, right? Let's throw faith in it. How I explain or describe faith is sometimes, I'm sure it probably grinds some people's gears, but those same people, sometimes the way they describe stuff, it doesn't even matter. Um, People are going to people. Okay, people are going to people, and that's okay. So earlier this morning, one of my book tour words that I came across was slander, right? And part of slander is people, tearing your name down, making up all types of lies and different scenarios about you, right? I've lived through that. I live through that, right? And so it was interesting when I was briefly going over it, because it talks about all of the people that are involved and even participating in something like that, right? The lighting is doing what it's doing. Hold on. But it talks about just the different people that participate in it. And I'm actually going to get the book so I can share with you, because I thought it was very interesting, and I just had a chuckle about it, because there's not one lie. There's not one lie. Hold on. Okay, so this is dealing with slander, right? There's not one lie, one lie. Da-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na. Okay, so who is it that slanders? This is coming out of my book tour. This is what helps me study and deepen my knowledge and understanding the different things concerning the word, okay? This was me opening it up after a while, but funny. Okay, it says, who is it that slanders? A whole generation of unbelievers who stand against true righteousness. That was interesting. Yeah. Do you know what a generation is? 20 to 30-year range. I just wanted to make sure that was known also. A generation is 20 to 30 years. So all age ranges participate in slander when they stand against true righteousness. Okay. Corrupt political and religious officials. Religious leaders. Some church leaders and members who oppose the minister. Some religionists. The average citizen who mocks spiritual things. Everybody slanders, right? Everybody that's against righteousness when you're dealing with the Lord. Okay? So everybody, when you're dealing with righteousness, or maybe you're innocent and people are trying to paint you guilty. Who knows what they're doing? Because you can't keep up with them when you're trying to do you, right? You can't keep up with them. But there are a group of people who will keep up with you and they're still doing them. So they're very, very talented. I mean that with all types of puns intended. They're very talented people and they will keep up with you and still do everything that they do. You know, they're very extremely talented people. I'm not lying. And so, um, you have to be to do so much in your own life and still be, thoroughly invested in someone else's. You are very talented to be able to do that. Um, but when dealing with these type of people, right? Um, you have to have some amount of toxic positivity. I think it's twofold, right? One, because we know that people, especially when you're walking with God or you're doing your best to try and live a righteous life, right? Maybe you're not even a true believer yet, but you're trying to make up your mind or you've decided that you're just going to do your best to do right, whether you believe or not, right? You're just doing your best to be a good person, a good citizen, or whatever your standard that you have set for yourself. You're just doing your best to be good, right? And people just mess with you, right? They hate the fact that you want to be good, or they hate the fact that whatever they hate you for, right? It could be a plethora of reasons. We won't even go into all of the things. But you need to have some level of toxic positivity because one, you're going to feel different emotions, right? Some of the emotions you might feel could be betrayal, could be ostracized, being isolated, angry, disappointment, anything, right? You can feel a lot of different emotions when it comes to people just talking about you or trying to belittle you. But if you keep a positive mind, if you keep hope, if you keep the faith that you'll get through this, or if you really sit down and look at all of the people that come up against you most times anyway, um, you'll realize that some part of them is damaged, whether they want to admit it or not, right? A lot of people can perform at high levels and still have a lot of darkness that they're fighting or that they're dealing with or that they are just a part of, right? And so that darkness is going to override how they show up or behave when it comes to someone else outside of themselves, right? For me, I could have taken the situation that I've been through and become very dark, right? Become very hateful, become very vengeful, become just full of wrath, right? And sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I look at the world and I realize that the world does sometimes need a little wrath, right? But God, yeah. Um, jeez. So you have to have some toxic positivity. Now, in utilizing that, right, and implementing that, you'll get to the point where you're really just truly unbothered, right? So it's baby steps. First, you have to accept that this is what's going on. Then you have to realize that despite what's going on, you're still going to be yourself, right? You are still going to be yourself. You're still going to be your biggest fan, right? And then number three is you have to have some type of positivity that you can pull out of it. Even when dealing with slander, we're supposed to do our best not to slander people back. Mind you, I said do our best because we're in this flesh suit, okay? And sometimes the flesh is hungrier than the spirit and the flesh is going to eat. Sometimes the flesh is hungrier than the spirit and the flesh is going to eat. I said that because I'm being naked and unashamed, and that is the truth. Sometimes your flesh is a little bit quicker than your spirit sometimes. Now this happens because you have to spend a little bit more time in the spirit, okay? But sometimes your flesh is like, forget this. Now, as someone who's trying your best to do good, let me also give this disclaimer. Sometimes that's just righteous anger. And that is spiritual when it's righteous anger. But if you know it's just your flesh and it's not righteous anger, then you have to spend more time in the word, talking to God in your secret place or whatever the case may be. So you're able to arrest the flesh when you need to, right? Not literally, but, you know, spiritually. I have to slow down because I'm talking too fast and I'm messing up my words. But you need some toxic positivity. You need to be able to look at a situation. Let's say you walk in somewhere and a girl is talking junk. Because they do. They do. They don't talk junk to you, but you just know they're talking junk. So I'm not going to lie. My thing was I realized I had fans. Now, I think some of the people that are entertainers, that when they call people fans, they don't do it in a negative way, right? When I say the word fan, I'm using it for a short of a fanatic, because you have to be a fanatic to behave that way. One, towards someone you don't know. Two, just for no reason, just simply because someone came in. That's a lot. So that was my toxic positivity, right? Now, I just had to realize that there's some things you can't change. And you have to be able to look at a situation despite what it is and find look at my little blonde edges, and find a silver lining in it. Look at them. Anyway, find a silver lining in it, okay? And ride it. Find that silver lining and ride it. Because if it's something that you're enduring for a long time, one, because of the length of time that is going on, you're going to see the same things. Like, there's only but so many tricks and things that the enemy is going to utilize, right? You're going to experience some of the same things. And because you're going to experience those things on a loop, right? Because the word says the enemy doesn't have new tricks, right? He just has new faces and new people willing to participate or join in on the foolishness, right? And I say foolishness because the Bible talks a lot about fools being in sin and different things like that. So they're always concocting wickedness and plotting evil, right? That's what the Bible talks about a fool being. That's one of the things that the Bible says a fool is. So the foolishness that people allow themselves to participate in, you can't do anything but find some reason to laugh about it, because if you allow the negative stuff that you might feel to override positive, it's going to make the situation worse, right? Especially depending on how you react or respond to the negative. It's going to make the situation worse. And so your only best bet is to utilize toxic positivity. So let's say we'll pull back up the example of a big boulder fell on your toe, and your toe was the only thing that it fell on. You're like, oh my gosh, this is nothing. It's just a toe. Now you are probably screaming on the inside, probably literally screaming, and through your teeth, you're like, oh, it's just a toe. It's just a toe. I don't know what you're going to say, right? But toxic positivity helps, okay? Because it's Passover week, so I'm going to use the Israelites too. Let's say you were like the Israelites, right? And you out there in the wilderness, and your situation is not what it was, right? Your situation is completely upside down. It's different. You're having to navigate a space that, one, you're not familiar with. Two, you don't have the same luxuries that you once had in your old space. And then three, you're surrounded by a whole bunch of other people who are also always complaining. When you are followed and stalked, or whatever the case may be, harassed, okay, um, people follow you around. You're surrounded by people sometimes who they don't care. They just do stuff because they want attention, because the world has programmed people to feel like attention is just the best thing to have, which is crazy, but that's what it has become, right? And so you have to be able to be in that type of situation and still be like, you know what? This ain't even that bad. I can get through this. The word tells us that we're supposed to rejoice when we are slandered or persecuted for God's sake, right? And so to get to that type of mindset to where you're able to rejoice in persecution, you need some toxic positivity. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. For you to be able to look at a situation knowing you want to say something else, maybe, right? Especially if you're just beginning, or you're just fed up, right? You have to have toxic positivity. Why? Because it's all in your mind. Everything you endure is in you. Well, not everything, right? Some things are physical, but even I don't know what I will have to figure it out if it ever comes to that. I will figure it out then. But you have to have some toxic positivity, right? Toxic positivity. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that. Because for you to get to the place where you're able to rejoice, even though you're being persecuted, you gotta psych yourself out. You gotta psych yourself out. That looked disgusting. You gotta psych yourself out, okay? That's just it. So, if you're going through something and it's not nothing physically extreme, right? If you're going through something that's not physically extreme, don't get me wrong, mental extremes are still there, but you have control over your mind. There might be people who try to, put themselves in a position to have control over you or want to make it seem like they have control over you, right? But you have control over your mind. You can control your thoughts. You can control your thoughts, and you want to maintain your control over your thoughts, which is why you would never want to implant a chip in your mind. You want to maintain control over your thoughts, which is why you never want to agree to have a chip implanted in you. Your mind is part of your soul, right? Right? God already has connection to your soul without any device needing to be implanted in you. I'm going to say that very loud. God already has a connection with your soul outside of any device being implanted in you. You don't need anything to help your mind adapt besides maybe some good nutritional food that's not infected with other stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's it. You don't need a chip or anything like that. Somebody got to say it. I'm the somebody. You don't need a chip. God did not create you with a chip in your body because he knew you didn't need a chip. He knows your body can regenerate and do all the things that it needs to do on its own because he created you like that. God. God that does not need to be created you, right? God that does not need to be built created you, right? God made you perfect, even in your imperfections, okay? And so, yes, sometimes he might ask you to be a little positive and toxic with it because he needs you to endure and get through a thing. He wants you to be better, not bitter. And so sometimes the only way to do that is to figure out how you're going to rejoice even when you're being persecuted. And you need toxic positivity to be able to do that. You need to be like, oh, it was only 10 people instead of 20 people from yesterday that said something. Oh, that's nothing. I can handle the 10. Oh, today 50 people decided they were going to laugh at the same corny joke. Oh, I'm going to join in and laugh with them. Let's laugh. Oh my gosh, did you see what she said? And the whole time they're looking at you like, wait, we're talking about you. I know, it's funny, isn't it? It's not funny, it's lame. But guess what? You made it through, didn't you? Good job. Good job. Now, this sounds crazy, but this is toxic positivity, and you need it. Why? Because, well, the people can't stand it. Why? Because they already can't stand you. And the fact that you can laugh at yourself and still really, truly be okay, well, now they matter even more, aren't they? Now they're in their own delusion, right? Because they're going to pretend like they're not talking about you when they are, and you know it because God gave you the ability to know what you know, right? And so they have their own kind of delusion. But the delusion you should operate in is toxic positivity because, well, they're not going to get on your nerves. What a lot of people call it is unbothered, unmoved. That's what some people call it, unmoved, unbothered. And that is slightly different. I might talk about that later. But it also has a little bit to do with being toxic, implementing toxic positivity. Yeah. So I have utilized toxic positivity to get over a lot of things, to be unfazed and unbothered by a lot of things because, well, I get to set the tone of my day. Not anyone's hate, not anyone's envy, not anyone's attempts to try to make me jealous or to try to make me get in my feelings about something that don't have nothing to do with me, right? So I imply a lot toxic positivity. One, because I'm my biggest fan. Two, because I control my mind. And three, because life is too short to be upset about insignificant things. Now, do we need to be mad about other certain things? Absolutely, we do. Absolutely. And we need to be raising up a sound and a voice for them. Absolutely, we do. Yes. But all things, no. A lot of things, when you really sit down and look at it, are really not that important to be upset about. So, how do you endure through tough situations? You need some toxic positivity. You need to be able to deal with rejection and still find a way to rejoice. And sometimes it takes you being toxic in a positive way, right? You're going to be overly positive despite what's going on. And the beautiful part about this is maybe when you first do it, just like in any other thing you may do, right? Let's say you wanted to become the best gymnast, right? When you first start practicing those tumbles and jumps and beams and all of those different things that they have to do, hurdles or whatever they do, you are going to make some mistakes, right? It's not going to go smoothly all the time, right? Maybe you was positive for 5 minutes and then you cut somebody out the next 2 seconds, right? Maybe the cuss out lasted 20 minutes, but you felt better and you reset yourself like, oh gosh, okay, so this worked for maybe 5 minutes. Now I got to work tomorrow to see if I can get to 10 minutes, okay, and only cuss out for 10, 15 minutes, whatever, right? It's going to be baby steps to get to that point. But once you realize you're at that point where you can be positive in a toxic way, you're unbothered. You're unbothered. I'm telling you. People will say whatever. I'm telling you about me. Okay, I can't tell you about them and how they are unbothered. But me, I'm unbothered because I'm my biggest fan and because there's really not anything at this point that I can't look at and be like, oh, okay. And then find a silver lining and ride it. So, um, yeah. If you are not a little bit delusional with toxic positivity and you're going through something that's rough at work or maybe dealing with your family or whatever the case may be, try out toxic positivity and see how it works for you. I'm not telling you not to feel your emotions, right? I've had many days where I've still felt what I felt, right? Even if it was anger, if it was annoyance, because people will literally do the same thing. It's just a different person doing the same thing, saying the same joke, trying to have the same funny. They ain't met you, ain't been around you, ain't even did nothing. But they got everything to say about what they think they know because what they might have or might not have saw or heard online. And you still gotta be you and be smiling and be happy because, well, they're just talking. They're just talking and, well, I talk, you talk, everybody talks. So, toxic positivity is one of the ways and steps that's going to lead up to you being unbothered. So, if you are not yet at the unbothered phase and you've been trying to figure out how to get there, practice toxic positivity and leave in the comments how it's working out for you. Okay, practice it and you'll get to your unbotheredness. Okay, okay. I love you later. Now, y'all have a great day. I'll catch you next time. Deuces.